Hi, I'm the Michael Myers fanatic, and I just thought I would give a few reasons as to why Halloween is better than Friday the 13th. First of all, it has a more colorful background. It talks about how it costs $320,000 to make. It talks about how the real Michael Myers, who was a film distributor, came from England, and John Carpenter tried to pay tribute to him. So the best way he did that was naming his fictional serial killer after him. It also goes on to say that the famous white mask that Michael Myers wears is actually a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask that was customized, and it was painted eggshell white, the sideburns were torn off, and the hair was poofed up, to use their words. Really, that's the best word they can come up with? Poof? In my opinion, Friday the 13th will never be as good as Halloween because they can't even agree on how they came up with Jason's hockey mask. If you watch the Crystal Lake documentary, about 2 or 3 people have 2 or 3 different stories as to how they came up with the hockey mask. One person says he did it. The other person says he came up with it. They can't even agree on something as small as that. So how can you say that Friday the 13th is better? Another thing that I like about Halloween is their environment behind the scenes. They all seem to care about each other, and they all seem to speak very fondly of each other. Rick Rosenthal talks about Pamela Susan Shoop, and Dick Warlock, who played Michael Myers in Halloween 2, 1981, also speaks very fondly of Pamela Susan Shoop, who played Nurse Karen in Halloween 2, 1981. He talks about how they had to do the scene for him drowning her, so he basically put his hand on her head, and when she was ready to come back up out of the water, she would simply push against his hand. Halloween just has a better story overall. I mean, after all, if you look at Friday the 13th, Jason was a simple drowning victim. Sure, that was a terrible thing, but the whole thing was confusing to begin with. If he survived the drowning, why didn't he go back to his mother, Mrs. Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer, and simply say, "Look, Mom, I'm alive, I'm not dead"? Why did he choose to stay in the woods all that time? Jason was a serial killer motivated by revenge. He was basically angry because he drowned, whereas Michael Myers killed simply for the sake of seeing another human being die. Again, let's talk about backstories. Jason Voorhees was a drowning victim, or at least that's what they said in the original movie, until we found out that he actually survived the drowning. His mother thought he was dead, which motivated her to go on her killing spree, where Michael Myers committed the most unthinkable act of all. He committed fratricide. Fratricide is the act of killing one's brother or sister. This brought shame upon the Myers family. According to the novel written by Curtis Richards in 1979, they left Haddonfield because they could no longer face the stigma of their son being a famous murderer. If you check out the Halloween series, that crime of fratricide follows him through the entire franchise. It's always the same. They always refer to him as Michael Myers, the boy who killed his sister. Jason Voorhees could never dream of that kind of notoriety because he is simply a carbon copy of the real thing. Another thing is, even though Halloween is inspired by Psycho, It basically tried to do its own thing, unlike Friday the 13th, which is an admitted carbon copy, and also Halloween sparked a slew of imitators, including Chucky, the Leprechaun, the Killer from Silent Night, Deadly Night, and many more. People tend to fear Michael Myers more because it is something that could actually happen in your town and in my town, as opposed to a dream demon who might rape you, or a leprechaun that may come out on St. Patrick's Day and kill you because you stole his gold. Halloween is also better because it has memorable characters. Dr. Sam Loomis, who's played by Donald Pleasance in the original continuity. It has Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And of course it has Linda Vanderklok, played by PJ Soles. Michael Myers also kills in memorable ways, like the time he took a knife and stabbed Bob Sims in the chest, nailing him to a door, or the time he picked up a nurse and stuck her head on the spike. The next thing that makes Halloween better is the fan interaction. Halloween's fan base is more interactive than Friday the 13th. In Halloween's fan base, they actually have forums where they discuss what could have been the reason for Michael Myers committing the crime of matricide. No one ever really cared to discuss why Jason became a serial killer. He was just more of a one-dimensional hillbilly, at least in my opinion. Another thing that makes Halloween superior is dialogue. It has memorable dialogue that the fans still discuss years after a respective movie has come out. Let's take the dialogue from Halloween 1978. Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance, said, and I quote, "I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face. He had the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then I spent another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil." What's the most meaningful thing they've ever said about Jason Voorhees? Nothing that I can remember. Another piece of interesting dialogue can be found in the 2002 sequel, Halloween Resurrection, where Donna Chang, played by Daisy McCracken, tells her boyfriend, Jim Henson, played by Luke Kirby, the difference between the two words continual and continuous. She says, and I quote, "You mean continually. Continuous means continuing uninterrupted, while continual means reoccurring periodically." I thought this piece of dialogue was interesting because it could also be applied to Michael Myers' killing spree. Meaning, he doesn't kill all the time, his murders reoccur periodically. So again, I say to you, Halloween has a more colorful backstory. It has a more interesting villain. No one ever speculates on Jason Voorhees' motive for killing or things like that. They don't say, why did Jason kill people? No one actually cares. Halloween has more interesting music, like the infamous main theme, which is actually 5/4 time. So, I leave you with saying this. In my opinion, Halloween is simply a better franchise. It's really plain and simple. How can you say Friday the 13th is better knowing that it imitated Halloween on purpose? I'll leave it there.